Remember that? Well, some of you may not remember that. So I'm not going to get into what those things are exactly, except that all cell division does not reproduce cells that are exactly alike. We can start off that way when we are that fertilized cell that begins life as a separate individual. But after just a few divisions, those cells have to start differentiating. Because some of those cells are going to lead to all the parts that are our brain. Others are going to make up our digestive tract. Others are going to be our bones and our muscles and our skin. And if they were all the same, we would be unrecognizable as a human being. We'd be one big amoeba. So we need our cells to differentiate. And yet, all that simply makes us a more complex, single organism. It's organized. All those different cells are still organized, one organism. And so we look at our world today, we use this as an analogy. Because frankly, this is the week of prayer for Christian unity. And I grew up in a culture that said Christian unity meant everybody believed exactly like we did in our church. Everybody else couldn't be Christian. That's not the kind of Christian unity that I could pray for anymore. That's not what we want to talk about as being the value of this week. Because we recognize that we can't be all the same. Do we also recognize that it's important that we are not all the same? Because each difference is there to add value to the whole. When we talk about dividing up, we look at what would happen if we had simply mitosis. Everybody divided up but stayed the same. What would happen if society was like that? Everybody was exactly the same. We had no different roles to play. We all had the same roles to play. We all had the same values, which was basically going to be self-preservation above all else. We would be a group of separated individuals. There would be nothing that would allow us to connect to one another, because we are each complete in ourselves. And we would think that way, we would act that way. There would be no reason for any compassion, no reason for any empathy, no reason for one of us to be vulnerable to the other. There would be no completing one another. But that is not the way we are as human beings. That is not the way our society is. That is not the way churches are, or any faith tradition can be. We have to recognize we become separated and we become different, but we have to stay connected. All this becomes more and more important as we go through our time together. We look at how that affects us in our personal and daily lives. And we recognize we cannot be that totally complete individual. If something is that perfect, you put it on a wall in a museum for everybody to stare at, because there's no way to connect that being to anything else. So you recognize your own need to be vulnerable to other people. And you also recognize that their vulnerability to you means you have to bring forth your own strengths. You have to reach out with your own empathy, your own compassion, and you have to be able to help them where they are vulnerable, just as they are helping you where you are vulnerable. So that's meiosis. That's being different and yet organized. That's being part of a more complex society. We take that into church life. We're talking about Christian unity. We need, I think, to talk about the world unity. We need to talk about all different faith traditions and realize that there's a place and a contribution for each and every one of them. If you've done group studies, you realize that there's different personalities, and the groups that work best have a mixture of those personalities. Because you need someone that says, why not? Let's try it. Let's do. Think out of the box. And you need somebody else to say, whoa, wait a minute. Have you really thought this all the way through? You need both kinds. And you need to recognize your need. No matter which kind you are, you need to recognize the need of the other. You may be the one that wants to shoot off and go 100 miles an hour right away. But if you don't have brakes on your car, you know you're going to be in trouble. So you got to have both. When we learn to recognize our need for others to be different, not just accept us as different, but we accept them as different, then we're finally understanding what unity really is about. Then we're understanding how something can be like this bouquet. It can be so different, and yet the effect is so beautiful. One of the analogies I've been using in my head for a while, I'm trying to figure out how to put it into a poem, because I have an acquaintance I met at annual gathering said, you put it into a poem, I'll put it into music. So, hey, that would work. I've been working at this thing for a year and a half. But I know the imagery that you cannot claim to walk in the light without accepting the whole rainbow. Because fullness of light has all the different colors in it. But carrying that into the next verse, I got one verse written. How do you learn to appreciate all the different colors? How can we do that? I think that's where that lens of love has to come in. That lens that says, I appreciate you for being different. So that I can look at my favorite color, purple. But if everything was purple, I wouldn't see anything. I could not tell shapes, I could not tell distance, I could not tell personalities. So I need that in contrast to other things, other colors. And when I look through the lens of love, I can let one color stand out as my favorite, but not say the others are bad. And yet when we look at our groups, we tend to say, we're the good guys. The ones who are like me, those I like. The ones that are not, I don't need them. Yes, you do. Oh, yes, you do need them. So, in our society, recognize that. In our churches, recognize that. In our nations, recognize that. The United States of America is a unique nation. Its heritage does not go back that far, and all during its heritage, all during its time of forming and growing, it has had continual influx of different cultures. You can't say that about other places in the world. You can't say that people came here to experience the rights, the freedoms that are part of America. So we have to look at the different nations as well and recognize we need some people to remind us. We need some people to hold up a mirror to us. Now that is not to say, as is so obvious, that everything is going to be good, that everything different is good. We've used the analogy before that there are cancer cells that will not stop growing and destroying until the host is dead. Those things have to be cut out. That kind of diversity we cannot tolerate. So we need to be careful in striking at the cancer. We don't cut out what is good, because then we destroy the value of the whole. So pray for Christian unity. Pray for human unity. Pray for a world that is so full of beauty that every color, every shape, every person can know their place, can fully develop to be all that they are. Let their full beauty show forth and simply add to the beauty of the whole. That kind of unity we can celebrate. And so we look at dividing and multiplying. Dividing to multiply, actually. One of the things, I've got a sister that's in a group that said basically from the start, all these different denominations in Christianity are an abomination. So what they did was start a new denomination. They didn't want division, but they ended up dividing. But they have added to the whole without even recognizing how they have. They've added to the whole experience of what Christianity can be. And so we recognize that, yes, there's a time for dividing and being exactly the same, but there's also a time when those divisions have to result in something a little different, so that the one-cell organism can become a complex organism. Let the beauty evolve. Divide so that you can continue to multiply. Multiply in your diversity so that you can add to the beauty of our world. Amen.